going on, guys? Captain JROD here. I wanted to do a little bit of a different video today, kind of like a podcast style. I have my good friend Jackson Denley here, big kayak fisherman. So wanted to make the video about kayak fishing. I really know nothing about kayak fishing. So I'm going to be just kind of picking Jackson's brain about it. Jackson's here fresh off a fall king of the beach, Spanish mackerel second place win. I was the captain, he was the angler, he caught the fish, so that was pretty cool. But Jackson from Minnesota, moved to Florida, 2021, and he is a big kayak fisherman, as I mentioned before. So talk to me a little bit about that. How'd you get into kayak fishing? How'd that occur? Were you a kayak fisherman back in Minnesota? Did it start when you were in Florida? All that stuff.
So, like Jared said, from the Midwest originally, grew up, fishing. I guess I got started with just, pieces of corn and a little stick with some string on it, just catching bluegill off docks.
Yeah.
Then that, slowly progressed into different species, starting to get obviously into bass, as everyone else in the Midwest is into.
Right.
And, just kind of went from there. Back home though, through high school and whatnot, would predominantly be fishing either from shore, wading, or, on friends' boats. In high school, one of my buddies, his dad had an old beat the hell John boat that we used to just take out on weeknights, 2 or 3 nights a week, and we kind of had free reign over that thing with the little Johnson on the back.
Those are the best types of boats because you never have to worry about fixing anything on them. You just
there's always something broken anyways.
Yeah,
so as long as it runs, we're good.
Exactly.
But usually it's just kind of it didn't really matter what I was on, whether it was from shore on a boat, or ice house, because it gets cold enough up there to do that. So
absolutely.
Sometimes it'd be in an ice house, sometimes it'd be on a 5-gallon bucket with a hole that we just kind of chopped through the ice. So,
cool.
Kind of whatever I could do to get, the tight lines.
Nice.
I moved down here in 21, and I tried the shore fishing game for probably like a year, maybe a year and a half. And
where were you going to shore fish?
Well, in the Tampa Bay area, I would just fish, I tried Skyway, a couple of the other piers, Fort DeSoto. I'd tried Hillsborough River, shipping channel areas, just kind of a whole variety of spots. And I'd catch stuff from time to time, but it was never consistent, and it mainly just drove me absolutely insane that, I'd be stuck on the shore and really committed to one spot.
Yeah.
And then you'd see other people go right past you, or like you'd be fishing a small little bridge over in St. Petersburg that's like a residential bridge. And you see some guys rolling through at night on a boat or in a kayak just pitching under docks.
Right.
And it's just driving me absolutely crazy. So I had just like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out some way to get on the water because I just can't take this anymore.
Yeah.
And I was living in an apartment and I still do. So my solution was, I don't have storage for a boat. I also don't have a car that can tow the boat. So the next best thing is probably going to be a kayak.
Right.
And I looked around because the market for kayaks is endless. I feel like after COVID, that it became a lot more popular because it's easier to get into it than as opposed to getting a full blown boat.
Oh, absolutely.
But shopped around a lot. I ended up purchasing Hobie Lynx.
Okay.
At all the kayaks, and looking at the Hobie line, it was the main reason I settled on the Lynx was first and foremost it's light. Some of the kayaks weigh well over 100 pounds unrigged, and I can't.
How much does this one weigh?
My Hobie Lynx unrigged weighs 46 pounds.
Wow,
I think exactly unrigged, and then probably pushing 60 or 70 once I get all my gear crates on it, the pedal drive and rods.
Can you carry that? How do you carry that under one? Can you carry it with one arm? Do you put it on your head like this? How do you carry that?
It's only 40 some. It's like 42, 45 pounds, but it's 11 foot long, so it feels a little bit heavier.
Sure.
But it's pretty easy to carry it on your head, to pick it up off the ground and throw it onto my roof rack on my car.
Yeah.
It's a little harder going upstairs with it, but it's not too bad. But the whole reason was that if I'm gonna get a kayak, I want something that's light, so it's not a whole pain to launch it, but also that I can launch it anywhere.
Right.
Because even if you get something that's heavier, like a Hobie Outback or a Pro Angler, those things weigh like damn near 100 pounds. So it's like you need to launch that. You have to trailer it.
Right.
So I want something that I can launch anywhere, anytime.
At that point, you might as well just get a small boat.
Exactly, because if I have to trailer it, then that defeats the purpose of the whole it being versatile and able to take it wherever.
Right.
So that's why I settled on the Lynx, because I just want something super light.
Yeah.
And it is. So So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the whole kayak thing, and you know, I've started out and still do predominantly fish inshore.
Right.
I'm starting to try to break into the pelagics a little bit more with the kayak now that I'm getting some more comfort. But it's shocking how similar the inshore game on kayaks is, or can be, to like Midwest bass fishing, because I pretty much exclusively fish artificials on the kayak.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can come back to the offshore stuff, but really still interested in the inshore stuff and talking about, you know, the stability of the kayak. You mentioned, and the other friends have mentioned, they stand up in their kayak sometimes. I'm understanding that the hull of your kayak is kind of different than your average kayak. It's kind of more of like a paddleboard style or something, and it's a sit on top, right?
Yep, mine's a unique kayak in the sense that it is more kind of like a paddleboard that has a pedal drive and a seat affixed to it, as opposed to something that's got some edges to it where you sit into the kind of like the cavity like a canoe would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's 36 inches wide at the widest point. It's pretty gosh darn stable. I'll stand up on it all the time just to kind of get a good view of like a flat, or to kind of peek ahead farther along a mangrove line, see if I can see any reds kind of scooting around. Or if I'm on a really good spot, like if I want to drift across a flat, I'll just stand up so I can stretch my legs, but also just it's nicer casting.
Yeah.
So I'll stand up all the time on it.
Do you ever get out and wade in some spots or no?
Yep.
Okay.
There's a lot of times where I'll just if I need about 4 to 5 inches for the kayak to move on the water.
Yeah.
And then I need about a foot to be able to use my pedal drive.
Okay.
So if it's anything less than that and I want to get through something, I'll just hop off and either beach the kayak somewhere, or I'll just, or like jam it into the mangroves.
Yeah.
Or I'll just start walking and take it behind me.
Gotcha. Cool. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So when you got your kayak, it really opened up a lot, like new spots to you. How do you identify spots to take your kayak? Are you online? Are you on forums? Are you just kind of Google Earthing it? Like, what does that look like?
Well, to learn, when I first started out, you know, I downloaded the Salt Strong app.
Okay.
You know, it's not the Bible by any means, but they do have a lot of helpful tips as far as identifying areas that might be productive.
Yeah.
And there's lots of good resources on there, and as well as other forums too, like Facebook, you name it.
Sure.
To kind of get an idea of what's happening seasonally.
Yeah.
You know, if you should maybe be considering deeper water, maybe look at flats more, maybe it's more of a mangroves type time of year, depending upon what you're looking to target. So I kind of use that to get an idea of types of zones or things that I'm looking for to where I want to fish. But nowadays, I like to switch it up. So I obviously have spots that I'm confident in, but I don't fish the same spots all the time. I go to a lot of different areas just because as long as it has the right mixture of like mangroves, oysters, grass and everything, it's within a decent proximity because I'm limited on my range, I'll just roll the dice and go for it.
Yeah, see, that's what I think is so interesting about kayak fishermen. They actually tend to fish more areas than guys who have boats. You know, I grew up, my dad had a boat, my parents had a boat, so what you kind of find is that the guys with boats tend to fish the same spots over and over again because they're launching from the same place, which is fine, it works. I mean, I caught a lot of fish growing up doing that, but after a while, what you realize is like a lot of the wade fishermen or shore fishermen, and especially the kayak fishermen, they're always going to new spots that they haven't investigated before. So you kind of get, I don't want to insult the boating guys, but I tend to notice that they get really good at identifying, you know, what's a good spot and what's not a good spot, even though they've never fished the area before. So I always find that really interesting.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, you know, we've been talking about a lot about this recently. You know, kind of your upgrade that you put on your kayak recently. I guess I'll start with, when you bought the kayak, what are all the accoutrements that you put on it right off the bat? And was it like, oh, you got the kayak and you got all these other things all at once, or did you kind of start, you know, adding other, you know, accessories? How did you do that?
Yeah. So when I bought the kayak, it came with just, you know, like the seat, the pedal drive, and the rudder, plus a paddle. Out the gate, I bought a kayak crate. Now you can make one out of a milk carton. Okay. But there's a bunch of companies that make, you know, like more defined cartons that fit those little plastic Plano.
That's just those those blue or white plastic crates.
Plastic sleeves.
Yeah, you can stick like a cooler in it, and then you can drill like rod holders inside.
They're really nice, and because kayak fishing, my space is limited. I don't have all these like in-hull storage that a lot of boats do.
Yeah.
So I have things pretty pared down to what I want, and it's highly organized in those sleeves.
Yeah.
So I just pop my crate open, be like, oh, I want X, Y, Z. Grab
Right.
that sleeve, grab what I need, put it back.
Yeah.
But I bought the crate right out the gate. Big shout out to Yak Attack. Their products are awesome.
Okay.
And I bought a rod holder that just kind of attached to my kayak and one of the gear tracks.
Okay.
Because I need somewhere to set the rod when I'm taking hooks out or doing something,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to lose one of my nice rods in the water.
Right. Right.
Rocked just that for quite a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and added a few small things here or there, just kind of like customized with tie downs and things like that. Or like a little just gear bin just to dump hooks and fish send into.
Yeah.
But I recently just bought a fish finder for it.
Okay.
Ended up going with a Garmin EchoMap 54 CV, so it's a 5-inch display.
Okay,
And
nice.
it's got down scan, no side imaging, just down scan, traditional chirp, and then built-in GPS mapping.
Okay.
I landed on it mainly because I just think Navionics is a way better map compared to the other parties.
And Garmin lets you run Navionics, or is it standard?
It's not standard in all the units. Like their lower end series, the Striker series, does not come with a mapping feature.
Oh,
You can
okay.
self map. So if you're only fishing like farm ponds, lakes, or creeks that are kind of like right around your area, you don't really need a mapping feature because you can just use the down scan to create your own maps. You just do a few laps around the pond,
Really?
and it makes it so it's
Huh.
cheaper. But because I fished so many areas, I knew I needed to have like preset maps in there.
Right.
So that's why I went from like the Striker series up to the EchoMap series.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's the unit that I settled on because I just think that the Navionics was a huge selling point. If I do get a boat one day, all I gotta do is pop the chip out and put it in the console of
Yeah.
the boat. And most other companies all take Navionics or accept it, like Lowrance does, so does Humminbird.
Right.
I don't know about Simrad, but that's well over half the market.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I settled on it.
So you wanting to get a depth finder / mapping system for your kayak, was it more because like when I fish offshore, I'm using the what we call MFDs, multi-function displays.
Mhm.
My dad has on his boat. He's got a 12-inch Simrads Evo 3. When I'm offshore, I'm mainly using it for the depth finder and the side scan to mark rocks and fish. But when I'm inshore, you're not really mapping. You're not really looking for fish as much as you're looking for grass beds and other things, and you kind of find those more so through the GPS system and everything. You're kind of focused on structure. So were you more focused on wanting it because you're going to fish new places and you really just wanted to figure out how you're going to get back home, or did you want it more because you want to fish offshore more, and then we can get more into that?
Yeah, I got it first and foremost just because I get real OCD about knowing what the depth is, because
Yeah.
it's whether is it 1/8 ounce jig head, is it a 1/4 ounce, is it a 1/2 ounce,
Yeah.
do I want a 1/8 ounce weighted hook or do I want the 1/4 ounce jig? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I really first and foremost wanted to know the exact depth,
Yeah.
and then the other big selling point was I want to start getting more into offshore kayak fishing and trying to get some pelagics this next year or two here.
Sure.
So I wanted the fish finder to, when I'm trolling or out in deeper water, to know am I in the middle of nowhere? Does it look fishy beneath me?
Yeah.
So it was just stuff like that, because it's not like in a boat where I can just throttle up and I'm at trolling speed. I gotta push my feet like a little Energizer bunny,
Right.
till I'm done for the day. So
Yeah.
I want to know if I'm in a decent spot or not, or if I need to change it up.
Nice. And what's interesting about your kayak, kind of going back to the kayak itself, something that I found interesting, because I'm not super into kayak fishing, but I'm interested in it, is how the actual pedal drive works. It's like these flaps instead of like an actual, prop.
Yeah, there's two main designs for the pedal drive series. There's Hobie and then most of everyone else.
Okay.
Everyone else most of the time has a prop design, whether that's where you move your legs like a bicycle.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have a fixed shaft and a propeller that's spinning down there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can have an instant reverse or not, to where the prop reverses direction.
Sure.
But Hobie, they do it differently, where they have these kick-up fins where as you move your legs, the flippers go left and right, and they say it's more efficient. I don't know. I've only ever fished out of the Hobie.
Yeah.
But the main reason was because, you know, with kayak fishing, especially here in the Tampa Bay area, you're fishing really shallow.
Yeah.
I don't have to do a full pedal stroke for the fins to rotate a full, like, 180 degrees side to side.
Yeah.
I can kind of short stroke it so my pedals only go 4 to 5 inches as opposed to the full length. So I can still get some propulsion in skinnier than a foot of water.
So when you're not using the pedal drive system, are the flaps flush against the bottom of the boat? Of the
No, they
kayak?
usually just hang straight down.
Okay.
But
okay.
like, let's say I'm on a super like let's say it's a low tide and it's a grass flat, and I want to just drift across this thing because it's like 4 inches of water, which I can in the links. I'll pull up my rudder and then I'll use a bungee cord to pull one of the pedals towards me so that my flaps are flush with the hull. And then I'll be floating in 4 inches of water, just going over those little potholes, or to like scoot across a grass bed using my paddle like a pole. Foot, just to get to this like little creek outflow.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
It's all about. I think the Hobie has an advantage for the skinny water.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's the same in deep water. But.
So does Hobie? I mean, I don't know if you know this, but does Hobie have the patent on that? Because that seems like something that if Hobie has, no one else would have. I feel like
I'm sure there's somebody making a knockoff of it out there, but
for sure.
I don't know. But.
Cool. So jumping around, going back to the your accessories. So how was we were kind of talking and texting back and forth about you installing your transducer. Sounded like it was kind of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's all Hobie kayaks, but at least this one came with a Lowrance ready transducer hole and mount.
Right.
So there's a prefabbed kind of cavity on the bottom side of the hull.
Yeah.
That's ready for like a downscan transducer.
Yeah.
And you pull this plate out and it's got a Lowrance attachment on it. Well, I wanted a Garmin.
Yeah.
So I found a small company that 3D printed a adapter plate for my specific Hobie links. Shout out to our kayak fishing, they're awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But bought the plate, worked like a charm, powered it up, and good imaging. I haven't put it on the water yet, so we'll see if it works good.
Yeah, you got to stick a bucket of water under it.
Yeah. But no, the adapter plate worked pretty well. The biggest pain in the butt was just connecting the power source to the actual fish finder display.
Right.
Just with some of the fuses and whatnot, and using the heat shrink to get a watertight seal over your connections on your cables. Yeah. That was a little bit of a pain. But.
Yeah, those watertight seals are pretty important. I've done a lot of boat work in my day and in the bilge of a boat, and those are just super, super important because things will corrode very quickly in salt water. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'd like to talk now a little bit more about kind of just some stories. I love, part of what I love about fishing is kind of pushing the limits and going to places I haven't been before, going a little bit farther offshore, finding new spots, in the boat or whatever. I've also done a lot of fly fishing, so doing when I was fly fishing, mountain streams, going up higher into the creeks and finding new spots. So kind of talk to me about, some stories, your best day of fishing in your kayak, your worst day of fishing in your kayak, and maybe a time when you push the limits.
So one of the things, it's not the best day, but one of the things that really just kind of gets me going kayak fishing is when I'm on a grass flat, and let's just say I'm just having a nice casual day just trying to get trout, and all the other guides taking tourists out, they're gonna, if they can't find snooker or redfish easily, they're gonna be pulling up on flats looking for trout, taking greenbacks and live lining out there. I love nothing more than just drifting around on a flat and pulling trout out in front of charter boats with artificials, because that's just, it's not hard to do, but man, it sure feels good when you do it.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Best day on the kayak? Probably a toss up between when I caught my first inshore slam here in Tampa Bay.
Within the bay? Or in
the general Tampa Bay region.
Gotcha.
Just catching that first inshore slam was a good milestone to where I finally felt like I knew what the heck I was doing.
Yeah, sure.
For the inshore game. And then probably the best day I had was one of the first days that I had my kayak. So I'd been fishing from shore and it was really hard to get like consistent action just because you never know if the spot's gonna be good, and if it isn't, you can't really move too easy.
Right.
So I was fishing, and the last couple times out, I had pretty good outings. Caught a limited trout and like just enough to have like fish tacos at the end of the day. I felt like I was really knew my stuff.
Yeah.
So I told my buddies, I was talking a big game. I was like, hey guys, like let's hang out. You get the beer, I'll show up the fish, and we'll just hang out that night.
Sure.
And man, I couldn't catch anything all day. I was out before sunrise. It was dead. I was fishing over in Clearwater area.
Yeah.
Couldn't catch anything, and I saw this old guy with those straw hats just live lining greenbacks out of his little John boat and just chain smoking cigarettes, and he just kept pulling in trout over the sides left and right.
Yeah.
And I rolled up to him, said, hey, how's it going? I was like, what are you doing? I told him I was fishing with X, Y, and Z, soft plastics. And he goes, no, you're doing right, you're just in the wrong area. And he's like, why don't you just try putting up that way and see if your luck changes. And I was like, man, I sure hope it does. I was like, have a good day. And then 5 minutes later, I was just fan casting to cover water.
Yeah.
And I hooked up to like a 26-inch redfish.
Nice.
And limited out on
where
trout.
he told you to go.
Where he told me to go.
Right.
Which is like a couple hundred yards away. Caught the redfish, limited on trout, all within like a 20-30 minute period. Then was boom, off the water.
Yeah.
Fish tacos and beer.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's always the old salts, we call them, that know exactly what to do and where to go and everything. So, but that turned into a good day.
Turned into a great day.
So what was your word? It doesn't have to be like necessarily they didn't catch any fish, but like you just experienced, like whatever you experienced that day on the kayak was just tough in general. You were telling me, there's one story I have in my mind.
It's a toss up between 2 days. Worst day could have been last year, January, first day out of the new year. I wanted to try a new spot. It was like kind of like a freshwater creek outflow, so it was brackish, probably more salt because I wasn't going to go in that far.
Right.
But I had to cross maybe like a mile of open water in the bay to get to the mouth of the creek that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I got up early. It was cold. Tampa Bay cold of like 50-some degrees.
Right.
And boy, did that water look sporty. It was white capping.
Oh yeah.
I was like, I'm here. So just started paddling out. Flipped the kayak about halfway into the paddle, soaked to the bone. Paddled the rest of the way, so I was just drenched, and it was 50 degrees, so I was freezing. And fished the creek the whole entire day, and I had 2 dolphins following me, catching or eating the throwaway ladyfish that I kept hooking into, and that was a rough day.
Yeah.
The other worst day was last year. It's been haunting me since the fall. It was one of my first attempts at trying to troll for kingfish.
Yeah. I wanted to bring this up too.
Yeah, I'm not going to say where it was because I'm going back in 2 weeks, but I was trolling near shore for kingfish. Got up really early in the morning, and I saw what was Spanish mackerel just blowing up on the surface on bait, and birds were dive bombing the school. And oh my God, I don't think I've ever pedaled that fast before. Went over, and I just drove straight through the bait ball with the birds diving all around me with my trolling lures behind me. I had like a white X-wrap on.
Yeah.
And trolled through it, circled back, crossed through it again, and no bites. Not even Spanish, nothing. I mean, I thought it was just Spanish. So then, I was like, well, this didn't work. So I reeled my stuff up and then pulled out a gotcha plug and casted straight into the fray. And, I got like one pop on the gotcha plug and it just took off.
Yeah. I
don't know what it was. I'm pretty sure it was a kingfish. Could have been a bonita, but it was pretty gosh darn big.
Yeah, you texted me about that after the trip, and you said it just like one direction and just took like a couple hundred yards of line.
Yeah, and it didn't. I got it up to leader, and then whatever it was cut through my leader. I didn't get to see the fish, but I did touch leader, and it didn't do any pinwheeling or anything, so I don't think it was a bonita.
Yeah, did it? But it felt like it had weight to it.
Yeah, once the fight was over for the most part, and it was pretty worn out. It was just dead weight until I was getting it up. So.
And do you remember what depth you were in?
Probably between like 18 to 25. Like it wasn't
okay. Because I was gonna say, if you're in 10 feet,
it was off a beach.
Yeah.
So
if it was in 10 feet, I'd be skeptical that it was a kingfish just because of the shallow water.
No, it was in a spot that made sense. There was like it was after the second trough where it starts to dip down a little bit. Like
right.
it made sense, especially with the mackerel there too. So
yeah, no, for
probably
sure.
that. So that's been haunting me for the last
Yeah,
6
so
7
you
months.
got to go back to that spot and get
Yep.
a second shot at them. And that was in spring or fall?
Fall, this
Okay.
past fall. So
Okay.
once it warms up a little bit, that's going to be a couple weekends from now going.
Cool,
So-
awesome. So, wanted to, I guess, kind of wrap things up with, a time where maybe you push the limits, and then, or how you want to push the limits. Maybe you just talked about it with your flipping the
Yeah.
kayak, whereas as a time you push the limits, but what do you want to do? What's something you want to do going forward in your kayak that, is kind of extreme when you really want to push the limits and catch a fish you haven't caught before?
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing based on our previous conversation that's something to do with going offshore. So
Yeah, it is. It does have to do with going offshore, and part of the pushing the limits side of that is like yes, you can go offshore in a kayak, but the question is, should you go offshore?
Yeah.
Because it has to be the right mixture of weather, winds, current, and stuff.
you gotta
like
be
that.
safe too.
Yeah, so it has to be the right mix in order to do it. So even if you got the weekend free, it might not be the best day to go offshore, and sometimes that's hard to balance out.
Yeah.
So definitely want to try to get more into the offshore game. There's plenty of action to be had here in Tampa Bay with like kingfish
Sure.
and whatnot, but I'd really like to get on some pelagics this year, namely blackfin tuna. I had a trip that I was planning to go up to the Panhandle to go fishing for because there's a lot of
And Navarre, right?
Navarre, Florida. There's a lot of near shore structure that's pretty accessible for kayakers.
Yeah.
But I had to cancel because the weather was just abysmal. Like it was lightning. It would have been not. I probably couldn't have even launched.
Yeah.
So I'd really like to try to get into pelagic like tuna and whatnot. I'm thinking gonna try this summer when it's not busy whatsoever. Try to get down to like the South Florida. Everywhere. There's plenty of good spots that kayakers can hit. Everything from like Jupiter all the way down to Miami. So
Gotcha. Cool.
try to do
Cool.
something like that.
So, kind of along this line, something that we've talked a lot about recently that it's sounding like you're planning on doing on your kayak, maybe in going after those blackfin tuna in the Panhandle, is something I introduced you to, which was like slow pitch jigging, which has taken the fishing industry by storm here in Florida. And we just did it in like 35 feet of water one day on my dad's boat, and you were really interested in it, and now you've got your own setup, so you're kind of planning on doing that on your kayak. So talk to me more about that. I mean, that's something that seems kind of extreme to me, because I'm always doing it on a boat,
Yeah.
and I tire myself out doing it that way. So
Well, the main selling point from the kayak standpoint is that it's no live bait needed.
right.
It's because bait management's really hard, and they do make live wells for like Hobies
Sure.
and different kayaks, but the investment to get a good setup that can accommodate stuff bigger than just like pinfish or shrimp on your kayak
Yeah.
is costly or difficult.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work for my kayak,
Yeah.
but it's being able to do, to have another way to present things in front of the fish, especially at deeper depths.
Right.
That doesn't require the live bait. That was the selling point for me. So
Sure.
that kind of plays into because meant for deeper water, plays into the interest of me trying to, troll and now slow pitch near shore wrecks, reefs,
Yeah.
all that jazz.
So what kind of setup did you end up getting?
I ended up buying Daiwa Saltiga on a Johnny Jigs, one of the Johnny Jigs rods. I forget the exact name of theirs.
Okay.
But not cheap, but I think it was well worth the money.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not a cheap type of fishing to get into, but
No,
I'd
no,
rather
no.
buy it. I'm a big firm believer in the buy once, cry once
Oh, for
mentality.
sure.
So it's cheap for me to get something that's going to last me 4 or 5 years, as opposed to blowing a few $100 on a rod that ends up just sitting and collecting dust.
Oh, absolutely, and especially like as much as you and I fish.
Yeah.
I don't fish as much as I'd like, but I feel like I fish a lot
Yeah.
compared to other people. It's just worth it getting something like you said that's gonna last and everything. So, and kind of on this slow pitch jigging topic, you and I, kind of to wrap things up, you and I have a trip. We just planned a trip on the American Patriot
Yep.
in April of 2026, right? So we're going to be doing slow pitch jigging, not on a kayak, but we're going to be doing it on the American Patriot. It's 3 days, right?
Yep. It's 72 hours out of Venice or Naples, outer Naples, where they dock.
Marco Island, yeah.
Yeah, and then out to dry Tortugas for 3 days.
Yeah, so I definitely plan on bringing my GoPro with me. I'm gonna get some good footage of hopefully Jackson and I hooking up on some big fish out there.
Should be catching everything from grouper species, tons of snappers and whatnot.
Yeah.
Kingfish and blackfins are definitely on the menu too.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing they say, I've watched a ton of videos, I've sent them to you, I know you've watched a ton of videos, like, during the day, a lot of it's like the bottom fishing, the muttons, and we're doing the dry Tortugas, we're not doing Pulley Ridge necessarily.
Yeah.
The mutton snappers, the snowy grouper, queen snapper, all that stuff and during the day, and some of that stuff at night, and then the blackfin, they light up the boat at night, and then the blackfin bite is apparently crazy. And there's some guys who caught wahoo on the jig doing that, which is really cool. So anyway, man, this has been a great conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys enjoyed Jackson's expertise. Appreciate it, man.
No problem.
And we'll see you guys in the next video.